You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by people. You are the light of the world. Your light must shine before people in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them. So for one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, for him it is sin.
Will God forgive Christians who don't vote? The answer is simply yes. But will God judge Christians who don't vote? That's more complicated. From the verses in the intro, we as Christians can see and understand that God has levied expectations at us, because as Christians, we are servants and God is the king. Thus, these are the things we are to do: be salt, be light, walk in good works, and a failure to do this is sin. The idea of salt and light is the idea of standing against darkness and corruption. Salted meat doesn't spoil very quickly, not because of the meat, but because of the salt. Salt adds a ton of flavor, yes, but it also preserves. Salt doesn't preserve itself, it doesn't keep itself from spoiling or rotting. Salt preserves the thing it is in. Salt has an effect, and it's not subtle. When something is well salted, it's undeniable. It's having a noticeable effect. And that's our job as Christians, to have a noticeable effect. There's this scene in the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where our intrepid heroes are all off to fight the bad guys, but Dr. Jekyll can't quite bring himself to become the distasteful Mr. Hyde to help his friends defeat evil. And as the heroes depart, this exchange happens.
You'll never use me again.
Then what good are you?
Then what good are you? It's a poignant question. If you won't help those opposing evil, and if you don't stand in the way of cultural corruption, even locally, then what good are you? What good are you if you passively become the temperature of the zeitgeist around you? What good are you if you aren't having an effect, or at least trying to? You're no good at all. You're just lukewarm, the temperature of the world, the culture, and the beliefs around you. You're worthless. You can look at Revelation chapter 3 for Jesus' thoughts on that. God expects you, he expects me, as Christians to have an impact on the culture, not to be impacted by the culture. And does voting have an impact on culture? Well, you bet it does. Politics is downstream from culture, but it is not a one-way street. It is a feedback loop. But tens of millions of people that call themselves Christians don't actually vote. It's pretty well documented. These Christians don't take advantage of their abilities to influence their world for their Christ, for their beliefs. And this brings up the idea of a sphere of influence, or more simply put, what you're responsible for, what I am responsible for. In Matthew 25 and in Luke 19, Jesus tells the parable of the talents. A king is going away for a while, so he gives his servants allotments of money, some more, some less, and he does so with the expectation to see a return on their investments when he gets back. And when he does, he sees that some of the servants have made a huge return, some have made less of a return, and one simply does nothing with his allotment of silver. What is interesting is that the praise for the highly successful servant is the same as the praise for the only moderately successful servant. The faithfulness to engage in the opportunity is what's rewarded. The level of success is somewhat irrelevant. That's a comforting thought for a Christian who is faithful to vote and to engage regardless of the outcome. But the servant who does nothing, they're severely judged. And each servant is only evaluated based on what they control. They're not evaluated versus each other. They're evaluated based on their own faithfulness. And this brings up the issue of what we are responsible for, or our sphere of influence. See, we as Americans tend to think that we can just go make things right in all corners of the world. In our outrage, grievance, and virtue signaling society, we've been trained to focus on things that are far beyond our reach, but we think and act as if we can control them and solve them as easily as the issues in our own town. We are very angry online about Ukraine, and yet we ignore who's on the school board locally. We're distracted from the things we can influence, but we're obsessed with the things we cannot control. And our vote is a huge form of influence on our nation, our state, our counties, and our cities. It's an enormous thing, and to whom much is given, much is required. We are to wield our influence based on our faith both inside and outside of the voting booth. It's such a simple, painless, and honorable thing to do in the U.S. Most people never have it that easy. For example, in the last 2,000 years, between 100 and 200 million people have died in various dynasty wars in China. They had no say in the matter. But you get to pick a president. You get to pick your leader. 100 million people in China couldn't even choose not to die. Now, God's not going to hold those people responsible for being hapless victims caught in a crossfire. It wasn't within their influence. But our ballot, that is within our influence. Being involved in our political system is so painless that I do not see how God will accept any excuse for not being salt and light at the ballot box. Will God judge Christians who don't vote? I don't know. It's possible. It's possible the outcome of Christian non-intervention will be the judgment in and of itself. It's possible the corruption run amok will be a far worse judgment than we ever could have imagined. If you look around our nation, you will see a dark, rotten mess. A mess of rotten morals, rotten anti-theist, anti-morality, and anti-Christian ideals at every level of the state and culture. Children are being taught sexual perversions at school. Universities are 99% leftist and 100% anti-Christian. Taxes are being used to fund abortions of children made in God's image or to help murderers change their gender, while hurricane victims are left behind. Kamala Harris recently mocked Christians at a rally, a really weird move by any metric, but she did it without hesitation. I would argue that's a very authentic moment for her. Our jihadist enemies butchered over 1,000 Jews, and after $16 billion in cash was made available to them by the Biden-Harris administration, yeah, they want another Democrat president. They know who will help them, and progressive American college students agree. The flow of drugs and crime makes our cities more and more dangerous, and worse for every citizen in them, Republican and Democrat alike. Lawlessness is rampant, our money is worthless, and the prices of basic needs are shocking, and they are still going up. The desperation is growing. The left has let or made or heavily contributed to our nation falling into this state. The darkness and the rot are undeniable. And I have one question. Are you going to oppose this? Or have we become hidden candles and tasteless salt? We didn't get here overnight, and we didn't get here with one election or one president. If you want to change or to challenge the cultural rot, you must be willing to work in degrees. Jesus isn't on the ballot, so you're not getting off that easy. You're going to have to turn this ship around more slowly than that. It's always done a little at a time. It's always done by degrees. The left has worked in degrees for decades, while Christians sat at home and let them. We got here one vote, one election, one degenerate school board member, and one corrupt mayor, one compromised moral at a time. If we're going to reverse this, we have to take the same road out consistently year after year. This is your hour. This is your time to vote like you believe in the scriptures that define you. And it is also your hour to live that truth out far beyond the ballot box, far beyond November 5th. And if you can't even do that, what good are you?